Well, good morning, everyone. It's 9:02, so we are going to get going. Again, thank you for joining us on this wonderful Saturday. We're so excited for you to be here. Again, I want to wish everyone a happy Pride Month and encourage you to support organizations that are doing amazing things across this state to uplift, advocate, and create positive change for the LGBTQ plus community throughout the year. One of the trickiest tightropes I navigate as chair is being a member of this community and leading in our party. Let's not think discrimination only comes from Republicans. I have faced both microaggressions and covert discrimination as chair in my professional career on campaigns, and I have to admit, these things sting pretty hard. The thing that keeps me going is the fact that representation matters. So my burns and scars are making it easier for the next person in our community to step up and lead openly if that's what they so choose. I want to read a wonderful op-ed that was published on CNN on June 17th by Allison Hope. And it's titled, Why We're Nervously Celebrating Pride This Month. The whiplash this week is dizzying as the LGBTQ community processes two critical government moves on back-to-back days. On Wednesday, the Department of Education issued guidance that instructs jurisdictions to interpret Title IX protections as covering discrimination against transgender children in schools. Thursday, the next day, the Supreme Court handed down a narrowly drawn decision siding with a religiously affiliated adoption and foster care agency that turned away same-gender couples. The 24 hours that encompass these developments, one step forward, the other a setback, are an impeccable reflection of where those who advocate for the LGBTQ equality stand as the moment during this 2021 Pride Month. We simultaneously have so much to celebrate and yet so much still to fight for. In a unanimous decision by the Supreme Court on Thursday, the justices deemed that the defendant, the city of Philadelphia, was violating the free exercise clause of the First Amendment to the Constitution by denying a contract to Catholic Social Services after the latter refused on religious grounds to extend their foster and adoption services to LGBTQ couples. Quote, the city's actions burdened CSS's religious exercise by forcing it either to curtail its mission or to certify same-sex couples as foster parents in violation of its religious beliefs. The decision further read that Philadelphia's non-discrimination laws, which would generally protect LGBTQ people from being turned away from services on the basis of their sexual orientation or gender identity, did not apply here because the law allows for discretionary exceptions. In other words, the highest court affirmed that it's okay for religious entities to take government money, our tax dollars, to provide services that they do not offer to all. They can, in fact, turn people away simply because of who they are or who they love. Some call it government-funded discrimination. That was just made perfectly acceptable. What's more, decisions like this have ripple effects that extend beyond just the group most immediately named. The Supreme Court ruling, for instance, could open the door for religious entities taking government dollars away from unwed mothers, from doctors' offices, Jews or Muslims from homeless shelter spots, or any other number of scenarios. On the flip side, the Education Department just reversed former President Donald Trump's previous reversal of former President Barack Obama's original guidance on Title IX. This move brings that guidance into line with last year's Supreme Court ruling protecting LGBTQ people in the workplace by extending those protections to transgender students in school. This move could have far-reaching positive impact on transgender and non-binary students who have long faced discrimination because of their gender identity or expression, and who have faced an onslaught of coordinated legislative attacks on their rights, including curtailed access to medical care and participation in sports. While the Education Department's guidance is most welcome news, it will likely also spur a barrage of lawsuits that aim to uphold recently enacted state laws that restrict transgender students' rights. The hope is that the federal policy usurps the state law. Otherwise, we may find ourselves back in the Supreme Court on this very matter. A 2020 Supreme Court case brought by Gavin Grimm, a then high school student from Virginia who is transgender and was denied access to the restrooms and facilities the other students used at school, was decided in his favor. But that happened only after 4 years of legal battling and a great toll on Grimm and other students who suffered from unequal treatment in the meantime because of their gender. Still, the Education Department's guidance is a welcome refrain following 4 years with a constant shroud of fear and danger that hung over our heads during the Trump administration, which weaponized agencies like the Education Department and other arms of the federal government that were supposed to protect our children instead of attacking them. Indeed, this guidance serves as an immediate and gargantuan exhale for the thousands of students and their parents and loved ones across the country, and particularly for those in places where transgender protections are lacking and where kids fear engaging in seemingly mundane and simplistic tasks like going to pee. The Education Department's guidance, along with the recent acts like the passage of the Equality Act in the House, the White House proclamation for Pride Month, and the appointment of Dr. Rachel Levine as Assistant Secretary of Health at the Department of Health and Human Services, the highest ranking transgender woman to serve in a federal position, are all signposts that we are again pointing in the right direction. Still, the Supreme Court ruling and dozens of other anti-LGBTQ laws that are working their way through state and local legislatures threaten our freedom. And because there are no clear and sweeping federal laws, like the Equality Act, which has passed the House but still remains stalled in the Senate, that protect LGBTQ and specifically trans people in places of housing, education, and public accommodations, we will continue to feel vulnerable and be subjected to the whims of the current administration and localities that do not always have our best interest in mind. As it stands, so many of our rights as individuals and as families rest on the beliefs of whoever has power in the White House and in Congress, and whether the Supreme Court, as it did this week and has in the recent past, opts for narrowly drawn decisions over the destruction of precedent. To be LGBTQ in today's America continues to feel like walking through a field with legal landmines. It means researching each city or town or state before taking a new job, or even booking a vacation to understand where you might find yourself a victim of legal discrimination. Why live somewhere where you risk being kicked out of your home or denied a child a loving home you are trying to provide? Why travel somewhere where you might be turned away from a hospital or doctor or refuse access to a bathroom or other public spaces? This patchwork legal landscape creates a treacherous and hazardous map for LGBTQ people to navigate, all while just trying to live our everyday lives, raise our families, and stay safe through a pandemic and whatever may come next. Pride was started as a protest against a long history of violence and discrimination against LGBTQ people. It has since evolved into a celebratory parade with support from entities large and small. This year is a clear reminder why we need both celebration and protest in equal measure. We have good reason to dance in the streets while we also clutch our protest signs and continue to fight for our rights. It's a wonderful op-ed featured in CNN again by Allison Hope. So what do I think about this? I think we have so much more ahead of us that is going to require a ton of hard work and a coalition of people from a variety of backgrounds pushing for equality. I am hopeful, though. One of the things that we currently see in the debate in our society is the debate about critical race theory. And one major factor that the one side of the debate, and we all know it's the other side, frequently forgets is that we as a country have conveyed a specific narrative or perspective in history. It's not inclusive of all histories, of all heroes, of all figures who we should be studying and learning about. As I mentioned earlier this month in our second Thursday conversation, which was focused on being proud, we should be educating folks on the lives of Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, two iconic trans activists who fought against discrimination within our own LGBTQ community. We should be highlighting the groundbreakers like Jean O'Leary and Midge Costanza in the political spaces. To champion my fellow Boricua activist, Pedro Julio Serrano, prominent attorney and civil rights legend Frank Kameny, and historic leaders such as Ernestine Eckstein, an organizing dynamo who was one of two Black women to grace the cover of Ladder, which was the first national lesbian publication in the United States. These are the stories we should be celebrating throughout the year. What I am taking pride in this month and throughout the year are the little ways our community is gaining our dignity and demanding inclusion and equality in our society. It's the beautiful transformation Elliot Page took publicly at the end of last year. It's the sign that our vice president, who is performing civil unions before it was popular, and our second gentleman were the first to walk in DC Pride's parade. It's the wide acceptance and critical reception for Pose on FX, starring the fabulous MJ Rodriguez. It's the new voices and new faces that we're lifting up, both Black, brown, and transgender within our LGBT community. And it's the fact that within a week's time frame, a Big Ten assistant basketball coach and an active NFL player were able to share their truths and come out as gay. One of my favorite lines from the play and now movie In the Heights is when Abuela Claudia tells Nina, "It's the little details that tell the world we're not invisible. We are here and we're not invisible. If you're a friend of the community, become an ally. And if you are an ally, become an accomplice." Thank you so much for attending my TED Talk. Just kidding. I want to get into our program because I'm so excited for you to hear from our speaker. We're going to run down our events. The biggest thing we want to share with you is our GCDP barbecue. Huge shout out to Ruth Todd, who is doing an amazing job, but also to Evelyn Nocella, to Ashley Newton, and to Hao Wu, to have just stepped up and taken on this amazing task, to be able to put on a great event for all of us as Democrats, an ability for us to come together, to fellowship. We're all vaccinated, so hopefully we can appreciate the beautiful outdoor air and appreciate each other. That event is July 24th, taking place at Shelter 7 and Cleveland Park, right across the street from GCDPQ headquarters. We're starting at 11 a.m. We still need chefs. We still need volunteers. Please reach out to Ruth Todd at her first vice chair email, first vice chair at Greenville Democrats, to sign up to volunteer or to cook in our cook-off. We really are looking forward to a wonderful event. We had some great second Thursday conversations. Please look out for our replay and definitely tune in next month for our Veterans or Democrats 2 conversation with a wonderful group of folks who are active in our party and who have served our country and provided us with the freedoms that we are so privileged to have as Americans. Next month, we will be doing a version of our breakfast with a virtual component. We're going to shorten that from 9 to 10 a.m. And we're so excited to have Barbara Poppy, a national leader and advocate in homelessness. She has worked with the Obama administration as a leader in fighting this systemic issue that we see across the country. I'm so excited to hear from her and learn from her. And lastly, we want to focus on our volunteer meeting, which is always taking place on the last Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. Look out and sign up and join us and see what opportunities you can plug into to engage with the Democratic Party. With that being said, I am so excited to get to our guest speaker for today. We are so happy to have AFA, the Equality for Full Alliance and Acceptance, which is based out of Charleston, South Carolina. AFA is an amazing organization that I have worked with over the past couple of years and have seen them really branch out to lead in areas that are beyond the Low Country. I was very close with their former executive director, Chase Glenn, who led with such brilliance. They're looking for a new executive director, but their board has so many phenomenal people. The work that they do is so critical, and I'm so excited that we're going to be joined by Phil Ford. Phil is no stranger to politics. Currently, Phil serves as the lobbyist for AFA, but he's also an advocate and a political professional, which is respected across the Southeast. Phil is serving as our Young Democrats representative, along with Bree Spalding, to the National Committee of the Young Democrats. That is a huge position which advocates for our young people, the next generation, the next leaders of our movement. So we're so lucky that we have someone of Phil's stature, of Phil's expertise, and Phil's experience. He just told me he's been involved in politics for over 20 years. He's been knocking on doors, organizing campaigns. But before I kick it to Phil, I really want to shout out his advocacy in so many spaces, but specifically for the LGBT community. He was vital in making sure that members of the General Assembly understood the damage and the impact that they had by promoting the detrimental bill that folks like Ashley Trantham from Greenville put forward, which discriminated and took the power out of our trans kids who just want to participate in our schools, whether that's participating in sports or feeling open in their space. Phil fought, Phil stepped up, and Phil showed up. So I am so excited for you all to hear about Phil, to learn about his background, but to also hear about the work that AFA is doing and how you can support them and get engaged. So it's my great pleasure to welcome Phil Ford to our June breakfast. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I'm honored to be here. As you mentioned, I know I look young. No, I'm just kidding. I have been involved with Democratic politics for 20 years. I was 14 when I first started knocking on doors and learning ethics reports for county parties. So coming back to South Carolina, and being engaged and involved on this level is full circle, and I'm so grateful for that and the opportunity to work with Democrats across the state. As Eli mentioned, I'm the lobbyist for the Alliance for Full Acceptance and for the South Carolina United for Justice and Equality Coalition. And this year, y'all, and let me first say happy Pride to everyone out there. And I use he and him pronouns. I've got my respect gender pronouns t-shirt on this morning that I'll be wearing a little later on the Young Dem State Convention that we're having this weekend. But this Pride means so much after we've seen an unprecedented attack on LGBTQ plus people across the state. From the first bill that started to move in the General Assembly this year, S1, the 6-week abortion ban, until last week with Josh Kimbrell's attack on not only mental health care professionals, but mental health care in general and youth seeking mental health care. We've got a lot to be thankful for. There are many, as you mentioned, I normally say it like this, so I don't say anything else. And this is being recorded. My good old friend Ashley Trantham proposed the quote, so-called Save Women's Sports Act twice in the House. We beat it the first time. I actually have a teacup, and I'll even, you can send this to her. I have a teacup now from a friend in Greenville that says Ashley Trantham's Tears, and I drank out of it yesterday. She cried when we beat it the first time. So about a month later, we had to do it again, start all over. But that time we beat it again. But fast forward about, I guess, a month after that, Gary Smith from Greenville, I believe, proposed a budget amendment. What we call a proviso is a 1-year approval with the same exact language from Ashley Trantham's bill. So there were 3 attacks in the House on trans kids. In the Senate, there were also 3 attacks by Richard Cash, 2 provisos and 1 bill that only got 1 hearing. We were prepared. Folks stepped up. We had providers from Prisma in Greenville all the way down to Charleston. Trans kids came, and we defeated 2 of the provisos and stalled the Senate version of the Save Women's Sports Act. We've seen, and I know Greenville was really instrumental in pushing back against Caesar McKnight. Mr. Chairman, you mentioned that not only do we see this from Republicans, but we see this from Democrats too. Not only ignorance, but willful ignorance when people want to educate folks. So if I say anything, or if there's anything that you have questions about, please just stop me, raise your hand, because I want this to kind of be a conversation between us. But the Alliance for Full Acceptance has really stepped up in lifting up voices, lifting up and making a welcome space for trans people, for LGBTQ plus people of color that has never been seen before. I think it was something like 55 people signed up to testify on a 4-day notice to show up in Columbia last week, pushing back against Josh Kimbrell's bill. And I'm going to actually click that over. That's actually, I don't know the right way to say this. It's called the Medical Ethics and Diversity Act, where a provider can discriminate against anybody for any reason. And there's a House version by Mark Willis. I think he's from the Florence area, if I'm not mistaken. But
fortunately, he's not one of ours.
Oh, is he really? Oh, I was trying to give you all the benefit of the doubt.
I know. It's sometimes we have to in Greenville. Just they need prayer. They need more prayer. What they're trying to do. So yeah, he's one of ours, unfortunately too.
Well, I tell you what, you have my word for me to come up and canvass the hell out of Greenville County during the next election next year to put some pressure on these folks. I will keep it PG. But we have seen through the legislature and the legislative process so many attacks, but they try to sneak it in too in the budget. So we saw the anti-trans student athletes bill in the House, 2 versions in the Senate. We've seen about 6 in each chamber abortion bans. And that's something that is important to us too, bodily autonomy. We've built a coalition that isn't only focused on, quote, LGBTQ plus issues, right? When women are under attack, LGBTQ plus people are under attack too. We saw an attack that unfortunately passed. You mentioned it, Mr. Chairman, CRT, critical race theory. There was a 1-year proviso that was adopted in the budget this year. And it was just so difficult to have to fight so many things at one time that we were unable to push that back. I will say a great achievement, I think, for LGBTQ plus advocates and our friends. We were able to push back against Miracle Hill. You talked about the Philadelphia decision by the Supreme Court that was narrow in, it can open the door, but it was a narrow decision because of the way that the city of Philadelphia was doing it. But I am so proud that we were able to push that proviso that would have given protections to Miracle Hill to discriminate against LGBTQ plus couples. And that's a big win for us. And they discussed that, I think it was 2 days or a day after the Supreme Court decision. So we were a little nervous. We felt confident, and then we got a little nervous with the Supreme Court decision. But we've been working on dozens of anti-LGBTQ plus bills, and we're just so proud of the work that we have done this year. AFA was a leader in getting the South Carolina United for Justice and Equality Coalition together with gender benders in Greenville, with Uplift Outreach Center up in the upstate in Spartanburg County, I think out of Pauline. You know, the upstate has been amazing to LGBTQ plus folks this year. I know it can be difficult to hear all of these attacks, but we finally stuck our foot down and said, we're done, and we're done being nice. And that's why I have my cute little teacup. I'll show it to you in a second. But one thing that we are really going to be focusing on over the next 6 months to a year will be hate crimes legislation at AFA. It has been proposed for years and years and years. And this year, it made it out of a chamber with bipartisan support, but not before they tried to take LGBTQ plus protections out of the legislation. We have seen it in all types of legislation. Family medical leave or from the state. We saw the definition of marriage questioned, even in some legislation this year. So things that have already been decided, we want to rehash in South Carolina. But hate crimes legislation is going to be a top priority for AFA this year. We've put a lot of time in building relationships, but we have 9 Republicans who have put objections on it in the Senate. It passed the House, passed the subcommittee, passed the full Judiciary Committee, and then 9 Republicans have held it up. And a number of those from Greenville County again. I'm so sorry to keep mentioning that, but that is just my drive to come up there and start knocking on some doors in next year, and then in 2 more years when our senators are up. So that's why our elections are so important. But we feel that this year we have built a coalition of folks that will be able to push this through. The business community is behind it. They knew our position that if this progressed without LGBTQ plus protections in it, we were going to do our best to kill it, to end it. And our friends at the NAACP, the Stamp Out Hate Coalition, were with us on it. They said if they're not going to protect all of us, we're not going to have this protection at all. So we're grateful for our partners and folks that we've been working with. To put it in a little perspective, though, I want to say this has been proposed for the last 6 years. The seatbelt law, that we don't think anything about a seatbelt law in South Carolina is objectionable or something that we think is just needed. And it took 7 years to pass the South Carolina General Assembly. Outrageous. So things take a long time in South Carolina government to happen, especially good things. But I think we're well on our way, and we've done our homework in pushing back on some of these folks. I see there's a question.
Yeah, so Phil, it says, can you address the objections conservatives have to the hate crime legislation that you're mentioning? And it says specifically that the law would create a, quote, special privilege for LGBTQ and trans people.
Yeah, so basically what was brought up was that being gay or trans or part of our alphabet mafia, as we affectionately call it, we choose to be gay or trans, and it's not an amenable trait. And they consider the other pieces of this, race, sex, as something that can't change, per the words of Josh Kimbrell in subcommittee and committee. But those are the main objections. It's rare to see that many objections on one bill, because they get 5. Love it. Take it, use it. It's rare because each senator only gets 5 objections, and they can see hundreds and hundreds of bills come across. So we're doing our homework to address those objections, try to educate lawmakers, but also we have what we call special orders in our South Carolina Senate. So if we can get our leadership behind giving hate crimes one of those special order slots, we can pass this legislation even with those objections. And I think that's our strategy at this point. There are a lot of rules in the Senate to slow legislation down. And honestly, that has been a good friend of the LGBTQ plus and abortion rights folks for a while, but now we're going to use those special rules against them. We have uniquely built a coalition, frankly, of Democrats and Republicans in our General Assembly to make South Carolina a more just and equitable state for LGBTQ plus people. But I think with the drive of Wendell Gilliard, who represents Charleston and Mother Emanuel, and Beth Bernstein in the House, we will be able to get this over the finish line next year. I will also mention that September and October are quickly approaching. They will be in special session for reapportionment and redistricting. That is something that LGBTQ plus groups across the state are paying attention to, and will be actively lobbying our General Assembly to make sure that we have districts that represent our community as well.
So Phil, I want to touch on a couple of things to know that you finish your thought, because there's some other questions that I just got that came into, but finish your thought there.
South Carolina has one LGBTQ plus elected official. He is from Greenville, but also happens to be a Republican. Womp womp. But I'll tell you, we've got a ways to go to get more LGBTQ plus folks elected in our state. We made progress this year at the local level and countywide with Kristen Graziano down in Charleston as sheriff. Huge freaking deal. I was so excited. But as you mentioned, Eli, visibility matters. So we need to push more make a more welcoming space for LGBTQ plus candidates across the state. Sorry.
No, Phil, you're right on it. First of all, I wanted to tell you when you mentioned Miracle Hill, it brought me back to when they made that announcement. I was watching Hallie Jackson. She was talking about the decision in Philly, and she said, "Well, what does that mean for Miracle Hill in South Carolina?" I said, "Oh, here we go again, being mentioned when we shouldn't be mentioned. On the top of every list, we should be on the bottom of, and on the bottom of every list, we should be on the top of." I also love how you talked about the way you all are building coalitions. Can you talk to me about how young people, or really anyone, can get that gumption and empower themselves to advocate in the way that you do? Because I think you do such a beautiful job of it and you bring so many people along, and it's something that intimidates folks. So can you share a little bit about, I know we have great advocates like Sharon Klompus on this call. Share with some of the folks how they can get engaged and take those steps.
Yeah, so what the biggest thing that we do is well, first, let me say, we like to be respectful at the General Assembly, as respectful as possible. However, I will never, ever tell a person who has experienced discrimination or hate to change what they're going to say to a member of the General Assembly. Speak your truth. And that's what I always tell people. Second, we created a very open space. We didn't say, oh, we've already got a women's group at the table. We've already got a trans group at the table. We allowed anybody and everybody to come along. We gave a lot of trainings. At the end of not this past session, but the session before that, we held 4 virtual trainings for people on how to advocate, what the government process and bill process looks like, how to find your representative, how to download the SC Legislature app and create notifications when a bill is introduced or anything that says gender in it, or a hearing comes up, how to sign up to testify, how to write good testimony. We've just created a space where anybody and everybody can be a part of it. I know in the past, there has been hesitancy to allow that with, frankly, our trans community and our non-binary community. And we said, to hell with that this session. We said, these attacks are against trans individuals, and we need to have trans voices there. And I can't tell you the impact that it had in lifting those voices. There were members of both parties that reached out to me and our other lobbyist friends at REN and Planned Parenthood to say, hey, and they were very honest. Hey, I've never met a trans person before. Can we set something up? And that's what we did. We're not scary people. We just want to be respected as a community. And if there's an attack against one of the letters in the alphabet mafia, it's an attack against all of us. Because I can't remember the quote exactly, and you can't see it. It's a hat hair day, but it's blonde hair. I'm having a blonde moment. But if there's attack against one person, it's attack against all of us. And we have to come together and lift the voices of people who are the most marginalized to tell their story.
Phil, that's beautiful. And I know you have to run because Phil is doing amazing work with our Young Democrats. As I said, he's the committee person on the national stage. He's also planning a whole training today, and they have an event. The last thing I want to highlight before we thank Phil is what Phil said is very important. We have a redistricting battle that's coming up. The General Assembly will do a roadshow. We talked about this earlier in the year. That's when we need to organize and show up and make the most noise, because that's where we can have the most effect. And what Phil said is so important. And I learned it actually on a panel last week from Sean Malloy, who's the VP of Political Programs at the Victory Fund Institute. He said that LGBTQ plus people can advocate as a constituency group, so that election maps should consider them when being drawn, just like we do with African American communities and Latinx communities and indigenous population and AAPI community. So I think that's a very important concept that not a lot of people know. So Phil, I really appreciate you bringing that point up as well. I know I can talk to Phil for days. I know we have so many other things we can talk to Phil. Phil, please come back. We'd love to see you canvass, because we're recruiting some great candidates. And what I want to tell you too is we're actively trying to recruit more LGBTQ plus candidates as well, to be able to show that it's possible and that representation does matter. So I want to give you a huge thank you, and on behalf of our leadership team and our members here at the Greenville Capital.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to put my information in the chat. So if y'all want to know about any of the trainings or anything, shoot me an email and I'll be happy to touch base.
Thank you very much, Phil. Have a great afternoon and good luck on the YD convention.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye. So folks, there is a lot of great opportunities to get engaged. Just today, there is a celebration of Black Pride down at Falls Park, focusing and emphasizing the leadership and the beautiful lived experiences of all of the community members in the Black LGBTQ plus spaces. Upstate Pride is an amazing group that's doing amazing work. Their leader, Caroline Caldwell, was going to be joining us today, but they are a little bit behind setting up their event. But I'm really excited that they are going to be putting on an open air event that's free of charge, that's going to expose a community within the LGBTQ plus community that doesn't often get uplifted. So if you want to experience some beautiful weather and you have some time, I encourage you to go and check out what Upstate Pride is doing down at Falls Park today. They start at 11 and they'll be going into the afternoon. I want to focus on some other great organizations that we see here in Greenville that are doing great work. Phil mentioned Gender Benders. Gender Benders is a phenomenal organization. Ivy, their leader there, they're doing amazing work on the ground, really focusing on building community, educating folks, which is so important in our understanding and our appreciation of the trans community. As Phil said, so many people have not had interactions with a member of the transgender community. It's important that we provide opportunities, that we provide spaces, and that we continue to support programs like Gender Benders, who are leading in these spaces. I also want to thank Ethan Johnstone and Pride Link. They're doing incredible, incredible work. Our local chapter of PFLAG. These are some organizations that when you have time, volunteer for. If you have an extra $5, donate to, because they're changing lives. They're affirming our children and our youth and letting them know that their lives matter, that their experiences matter, and their truth is beautiful and should be lived in an open manner. I'm so excited that Greenville is changing, that we're fighting against the anti-LGBTQ ordinance from 1996, that we're able to celebrate events like Pride here, and hopefully someday have the best Pride parade across South Carolina, because Greenville is the best place in the state. I want to thank so many people like Leslie Johnson, who has been active in this community well before I was born, doing the work out of selfless love, opening her door, providing shelter, providing a meal. Again, you all have heard this from me before. It's a warm smile, it's that embrace, and it's letting people know that you accept them for who they are. That matters. This community needs that, they deserve that, And we're so excited to embrace them as we continue to build our winning coalition here in Greenville, South Carolina. I want to focus on one of the things that we all know took place. And I'm so excited we were able to see the importance and the need for our vice presidential candidate visiting us this past month. I will tell you all, that experience was very, very intense. There was a lot going on in a short amount of time. I want to put out there in the public information. I was not responsible for that event. I know a lot of people in the community think I was planning that event, putting a list together. I think it's really important to be transparent. I also think it's important that when people are communicating to folks within our party, to their friends, that they have their information right. The Republicans deal in misinformation and untruths. I don't want people in our own party to do that. So I just want to use this time to set the record straight because I know there's some confusion out there. I want to reiterate, that event was a nonpartisan event focusing on vaccinations. That is not a Democratic issue. That is not a Republican issue. The reason we see such low rates is because it has been put in a partisan lens. Greenville is suffering because folks don't want to get vaccinated. That's not a you thing on this call. I know many of you all are fully vaccinated, and I appreciate that. But the purpose of that visit was to highlight the need because we have a gap in leadership in the governor's mansion. We have a lack of leadership in Greenville County Council, and the Greenville City Council can only do so much. And that's why the vice president came. We were honored that she chose Greenville, South Carolina. There were so many places that she could have picked, but she chose Greenville, South Carolina. And that's a testament to the work that we're doing on the ground, but also the need for us to continue to do the work, to educate our community on public health, and also to get leaders that will put in place public health measures that will prevent pandemics, that will be based on scientific research and fact, and will take out the D and the R whenever there's a pandemic going forward. We have to be able to move forward as a country, and there are things that are above politics and above partisan politics. That was the reason of the visit, and I just really wanted to reiterate that and really recenter that conversation about what the purpose of that was. And again, there was a lot of confusion. I got a lot of calls. I want to let everyone know, if I was planning that event, I would be working for the White House and I wouldn't be your chairman. So just I want to put that out there. Not that I don't enjoy being your chairman, but that would be really hard to do multitasking there. I just want to really make sure and reiterate that because that was a very interesting, and I'll use interesting as the adjective of choice, experience for me as a chair. So just wanted to make sure that that was clear, that you all heard it from my perspective. And again, if folks have questions, please feel free to reach out to me. The game of telephone through other people isn't productive, and it doesn't get to the bottom of the issue. As my parents always told me, go to the source. Some of the folks in our community did that, and I'm very appreciative of that. They came to me directly and asked the questions, and I appreciate that. But just to make sure that we're all clear, I just wanted to handle that and make sure that we can wrap that up in a nice, tidy bow. And hopefully the next time that the vice president visits, it'll be on much better terms, and all of us can be present, celebrating everything great that the Biden-Harris administration is doing. I really appreciate you all indulging me with that, but I wanted to make sure that I got that out there as well. We currently don't have any elected officials that are on the call, but I do want to highlight some specific things that are happening that are very important. Miss Lillian Brock Fleming is going to be celebrating her 40th anniversary on City Council. Kate Franch is doing a great job putting together an event with her team. I encourage everyone to look into that event, July 17th is going to be that date. And it's just a celebration of Lillian's career, her experience, and her consistent fight for the democratic values. She is running with Russell Stahl and Matthew Prater to be able to continue that great leadership in Greenville City Council. We also are recruiting people in Malden, Fountain Inn, in Travelers Rest, in Greer, and in Simpsonville to change those local bodies to represent the values you all fight for every day. If you know folks that are interested, the beautiful thing about these other city elections that are not the city of Greenville is that they're nonpartisan and the election filing date has not happened yet. So folks still have time to file, and it's a very condensed election schedule, which all of you know makes a much happier human being. When you don't have to run for 4 years, it makes that experience and that journey much more pleasant. If you want to get involved in a campaign, we'll be releasing some of these folks' names. Please get involved. Some of these folks have not announced yet, but they're some of the best Democrats that we have, that you all have worked with and that you all know. So we really want to change the dynamics in places like Malden. So folks like Dale Black cannot spew his racism from the pulpit in that body. That's what Dale Black is doing. We're looking to replace folks like that and bring a new inclusive energy. The last thing that I really want to say, and we're going to let everyone head out early and get some time back on their event, is please sign up and make sure you're passing out our new communications tool called The Briefing. We are modifying our Bray. You'll be getting a physical Bray next month in July. We're moving to a quarterly physical copy, but Laura and Roxanne and the communications team are doing a great job with our new communications tool. It's a newsletter called The Briefing. If you haven't signed up for it, please sign up and share it with 5 different people so that they can sign up. It has great information. It's a new way to communicate, and we've gotten great feedback. I want to give a shout out to Laura, and a lot of young people are getting engaged too. And that's the purpose of what all of us are here for. It's to build a party that will outlast all of us, that will be here and be in control when all of us are looking down smiling. I want to make sure I reiterate, July 24th, GCDP barbecue. If you're a cook, show off your skills. If you like to eat like me, come enjoy some food and eat. Our team is doing a great job. Again, huge shout out to our first Vice Chair, Ruth. Leaders like Hal, Ashley, Evelyn have stepped up in a tremendous way, and we cannot do anything we do without our amazing volunteers. Lastly, I want to give a huge shout out to Kynard Johnson, who is our office volunteer. Kynard is a person that will put up ideas, but also give money to fund ideas. That is such a beautiful thing to have in our party. Kynard is so kind and willing to work with people. I know there's some folks that are on here that work in the office, and I want to thank them too. They take hours out of their schedule to allow us to be open, to talk to people, to reach out to voters, and they are a special part of what we do. So to every volunteer that mans our office, that's working with Kynard, I want to thank you, because we wouldn't be able to do it without y'all. Celebrate Pride every day of the year. Reach out to some of the organizations that we mentioned. Support LGBTQ candidates when they run. Affirm our young people that are struggling with their identity or looking to find that acceptance. Let them know you care, and let them know you're willing to stand in the gap and fight for them. It is a pleasure serving as your chairman as always. I have a wonderful leadership team. And on behalf of all of us, I hope you have a wonderful Saturday. We look forward to seeing you at our events, the Second Thursday Conversations, the GCDP Barbecue, and our breakfast next month, which will feature Barbara Poppy. Thank you all so much, and have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Everybody.